Hey everybody, this is Joe Hoye, owner and founder of Diet Detox. I am super excited to have the opportunity to jump on this podcast and just share why I think that diets are really the worst possible route that anybody could take in order to get to their goal weight. And in this episode, you're going to understand why, but even more so, even better than that, once you understand why and you agree, because I know you will, once you know why, I'm also going to tell you how to get to your goal weight and actually what your true goal always is, how to get there without the diets and do it in a sustainable and most importantly, fun way that you can follow for the rest of your life. So hang out with me in this episode. Can't wait and appreciate your time. See you soon.
You're listening to the Good Question Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Our goal is to make each of our guests exclaim, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. Because when that happens, it means you, the listener, may be inspired to learn more beyond the interview and to ask great questions yourself that lead to new insights. In this podcast, we cover historical and current anthropology, comparative religion, and history. Welcome, and let's get started.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Good Question Podcast. My guest today is Joe Hoye. He's the owner of Hoye Fit and the host of the Midlife Makeover. We're going to talk about losing weight over 50 for women. So I think this will be a great call. So thanks for coming, Joe. How you doing?
I am doing good, Richard. Thank you so much. How about yourself?
Okay. Yeah. We did the usual, oh, you don't look 50. Oh, well, I'm not. I'm 30. And, oh, you're not a woman and type stuff in the beginning. So we're all settled with that.
We knocked that out of the park. We're good.
Yeah, tell me a bit about your background and how you got into coaching people and why women over 50.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always the elephant in the room. I mean, you just nailed it exactly that. Like the first thing you asked me when we jumped on, we saw each other, you're like, well, Joe, you're not exactly a 50-year-old woman. What made you? And that kind of leads to the question of why am I coaching 50-year-old women? And it's really a three-part story. Kind of goes back to when I was a kid, 13 years old. Growing up, my mom was my only strong and consistent role model in my life. And at 13, she saw that I was going down the wrong path, right? She saw that I was starting to hang with the wrong kids, make the wrong choices. And then number two, also start to get picked on a good bit in school. And so number one, I was doing dumb stuff. And number two, I was losing my happiness and confidence rapidly. So she had already been in the gym for years, just taking care of her own health. And she came home one night and she asked if I'd done my homework. She finished dinner. All my chores were done. She's like, hey, buddy, I'm going to go to the gym. I'd love it if you'd come with me. And it was an obvious answer for me because, I mean, I was getting picked on, right? That to me seems like the clear path of gaining confidence, stopping getting picked on. So it's like, yeah, Mom, I'd love to go to the gym. I'd love to get bigger. And from that day forward, I fell in love with it. So from 13 to 18, I went to the gym religiously. And for a little bit of context, at 13, I was really tall, really skinny. I was about 5'11", 135 pounds. And when I graduated high school at 18, I was just about the same, maybe 5 pounds, 10 pounds heavier. So still really tall, really skinny, never good in school, not athletic. I didn't have much going for me, but I started pursuing a career in the medical field. And in college, I had to take courses because of that on things like nutrition, anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, just things about the body that will change it, right? And how change happens. So from there, I turned into my own guinea pig. I took everything I learned and I started applying it to myself. So I changed how I'm lifting. I changed my nutrition. And because of that, I started changing my body and I started gaining some muscle. But at the same time, I'm also an 18-year-old kid away from home in college. So I start partying and drinking and doing dumb stuff and treating my body poorly. So while I gained some muscle, I also gained a considerable amount of fat. And in the span of about a year to a year and a half, I went from that 145 pounds up to 225. And then I had a new problem, right? I was still unathletic, still not super good in school, still not confident, but instead of being skinny, I was just fat. And I didn't love that either. So I cut the partying. I really dialed in everything I knew. And that's when the change that I wanted happened. I lost the fat. I kept the muscle. I went from 225 down to what I am right now, which is about 195. And growing up in a small town, people noticed, right? They saw me underweight, they saw me overweight, and they saw me in good shape and confident. So people started to ask, like, Joe, we've known you at all these stages. How'd you get here? And enough people asked me to where I had the thought of like, wow, I think that I can really help people avoid the things that I experienced. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a couple bucks and I'm going to coach people to either lose fat and show their muscle or gain muscle and keep their fat off. And transparently, Richard, I thought I wanted to help people like me, young men feel more confident. So I started running these 8-week fat loss challenges, and I got a ton of signups, but I never looked at the names. And on day one, when I opened up my Zoom and I looked at all the people that had paid me for coaching and my advice, nobody looked like me. They all looked more like my mom, like 50-year-old women. And I was like, at first I was scared. I was like, well, what the heck happened? How did I attract this demographic? But I think what happened is, like I said in the beginning, my mom was my strongest, most consistent role model. And I spent most of my time with her and her friends. So I learned to communicate in a way that resonated with them. So I naturally drew them in. And at the end of that first call, number one, we were all laughing and having a blast. And then at the end of that first 8 weeks, everyone got results. And I was like, you know what? I don't really care if this is what I was after or not. This is enjoyable for me, and this is what I'm going to do. And then the final part to my story is I graduated college and I got my job in surgery, helping the doctor with procedures. And again, getting pushed in this direction. In my role, I was a surgical technologist. In my role, there was myself and 7 other girls that were doing that job. And my higher ups, decided it was a great idea to take the one male in this role and stick him inside the OB and GYN based rooms. And so again, getting pushed in this direction, I'm spending 40 hours a week plus on-call emergency surgery, learning from these surgeons about the female body, how it functions, how it works, and asking proactive questions. They thought it was for surgery, but I would ask questions like, hey doc, how did this lady get in here? What could she have done proactively to avoid that? And I was taking that knowledge and bringing it to what is now Diet Detox and applying it to my clients. And so fast forward 7 years, this is where we're at. I actually just made a really big change about 2 weeks ago, but that's the story up until now.
Well, so you got into it accidentally, but now, I mean, it's of interest to you. You know a lot about it. You have a lot of experience, and it also honors your mom too. So it's a very cool thing that you're doing,
Exactly. And I think what it came down to in the beginning is I realized that if my mom didn't push me in this direction, I wouldn't be here. And so if I truly do want to make an impact in somebody's lives like me, I got to help their mom because it's going to trickle down into the rest of the family.
You better watch out. You don't make people cry when you explain this stuff,
I've done it.
I'm sure. Well, it's very cool. So there's no problem with your female clients trusting you, even though you're totally different from them. Man, woman, younger, older. They don't. Now, how do you think your clients see you? Do they see you as like, I don't know, a son they never had that's just helping them, or how do they see you?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think the differentiator here is who you're talking about, right? So my clients are obviously open-minded enough to understand that somebody that's not like them can still understand them and help them. But Richard, there are people out there, and they might be listening now. And if you are, I love you. But there's people out there that will think, hey, because of this guy's age and because this guy is a guy, he's never going to experience the things that I will. And because of that, he can't help me. And I'm going to be mad at him for helping other people or trying to. And we definitely get a mix of both. But you know what? We're not everybody's cup of tea. And that's fine. I'm going to help as many people as I can. And that's what I'm going to focus on.
Okay. So your clients, what are the reasons you hear from them? From what I could perceive, so I'm going to be 50 soon. My wife will too. It's not like the movies from what I could see. Most women don't want to fight and punch and kick and be super strong and all this other stuff. And as they get older, I don't know, it just seems like as they get into this age range, I don't know how to explain it, but they seem to give up on the idea of having strength or being functional and all that. If they don't watch out, they can mentally put themselves into a framework of old age even before physically they get there. That's just my limited experience. But what do you see?
No, you nailed that. Oftentimes women will, and I think men will too, but women will put themselves in a box of saying, well, you know what? I'm middle-aged, I'm 50, I'm 45, whatever it may be. This is it. This is what I've got for the rest of my life. When in reality, I think that if we change the lens we look through, we change our perspective, God, this could be an awakening to another life, a more enjoyable life, right? I mean, that's just about half your life. You have another half of your life to live. And now the kids are out of the house. You're hopefully more financially independent. And the only thing you now have to focus on is nailing your health. And that whole thing can be pretty simple. So if we can nail your health, you're financially independent, the kids are out of the house, you have more time on your hands, you're more confident in yourself, that second half of your life can be the best half. You just got to change a few simple things.
Okay. So what are the reasons that women are telling you they're coming to you? What are some of the common ones?
God, the most common thing I hear is, Joe, nothing changed. right? I didn't change my diet. I didn't change my exercise. I didn't change my job, my partner, my kids, nothing. But at the same time, my body changed and everything changed massively. I don't look the same. I don't feel the same. When I eat the same, I gain weight. So I don't know what to do. And I get it, right? There's a lot of changes that happen during perimenopause and menopause. And honestly, before then, leading up to it, that will start to affect 90% of women. That's just a guessing statistic. That's not real. 90% of women at the age of 45 or 50. So no, you have to play a different game to get a different result.
I remember going to the eye doctor when I was 44. And he goes, "Oh, your eyes are pretty good for your age." I said, "What do you mean my age? I didn't even feel old." He goes, "You're in your 40s. How old are you?" I said, 44. He goes, "You're lucky. A lot of people need progressives or bifocal." So then about a year ago, I'm 48, and I'm looking at the phone, and I go, "Oh, no. I'm moving it closer and further away, closer and further away." Shit. He was right. So it got me just a few years later. So, I understand a little bit about changes go on, and you feel different, and you got to do something about it. When I go to the gym, if I see young guys, it's like fine. But if I see an old guy, 60s, 70s, I'll go talk to them, and it's really cool. There's not a lot of them, but I see some, and they all say the same thing. You got to keep going forever. You can never stop, and if you do, you'll be in better shape instead of being like half dead by the time you're older.
God, that's exactly it. Is build the foundation, and once that foundation is built, it's so much easier to maintain it. But you've just got to do that initial work.
So what's of the women that you work with is, I guess a lot of them would be in menopause or perimenopause. How does that change the ability to get fit and to do the workouts? Is it really a big deal when it happens, or can it be handled like really gracefully and it's not a big deal?
It can be handled very gracefully. And I understand that we want to point the finger at things like hormones, right? That's the first thing many of us are going to think when we think of menopause or perimenopause. It's like, well, my hormones change, and that's the reason that I can't lose weight or I can't do XYZ anymore. And you know what? Like, that could be true, but that is such an advanced protocol to look at that we first need to do the foundational things, like look at your nutrition and your exercise and your sleep and your stress management. And until those things are in order, we can't point the finger at something more complicated, because those are the foundation of what we're talking about as success today. The fact of the matter is, for men too, but women much more, at the age of 30, you start to lose muscle mass every single year. And I don't know the percent at 30, but I know at 40, you're losing 1% of your muscle mass year after year as a woman. When you get to 50, that number doubles. Now you're losing 2% of your muscle mass year after year. And when you get to 60, that number doubles, and now you're losing 4% of your muscle mass year after year. And we understand that muscle is the thing on our body that burns the most amount of calories. And so if we lose the one thing that burns the most amount of calories on our body, it gets so much harder to lose weight, because we understand we need to eat less calories than our body needs in order to lose weight. But guess what? Once you hit 30, then 40, then 50, then 60, your body, if you don't do something about it, needs less and less and less calories every single year. And so that's the main problem.
I remember that too. I was working as an engineer in my 20s, and I was eating lunch with the guys, and they were 40, 50, 60. And I was eating, and I'm like, "Come on, guys, eat, let's go." And they were like, "You can't do this at our age." I said, "Okay." Well, I ate their food. They go, "You'll see." And they were right. Now I eat, less than half of what I used to eat, and it's much harder to keep weight off. So yeah, you really feel it after a while.
I'm glad you can look back and realize that, but it is avoidable, right? Like if we could go back in time and I could tell 20-year-old you, like, "Hey, Richard, don't stop lifting and don't stop eating that way, because when you do, you're signaling to your body to keep that muscle," you'd still have that ability now. And the same thing's true for these women, but it's too late, right? It's too late to eat that way now, but it's not too late to build that amount of muscle and then give yourself the ability to eat that way again in the near future.
So what are some of the most difficult things that women need to overcome when they first start working with you, let's say?
We've got to break a lot of beliefs, right? We talked a lot about exercise. We talked about muscle for women. And that in itself is a belief that we have to break, because that means you ladies have to be in the gym and you have to be lifting similar to me. Believe it or not, like it or not, it is what it is. I don't make the rule. You have to be pushing yourself in the gym, because that's what signals to your body, number one, you need to keep muscle, and number two, you need to grow more. But the other big thing, and possibly the tougher thing, is that women can eat and should eat more than 1,000, 1,200, 1,400, 15 or 1,600 calories a day. And the only reason we don't think that as a population is because of the really big name diets. I'm not going to name any because I'd rather not get in trouble, but we all know who I'm talking about. If I say diet, just think of the first three that come to mind. Those are probably the big three that are giving you low calorie diets and telling you that that's healthy, when in reality, that's just another thing that's having you lose muscle faster than normal.
Why would a low calorie diet, if you're in caloric deficit, why would that, what happens? Why would these diets cause those problems?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a really good question. So that's a stress, right? Let's think about what weight loss is. We're eating in a caloric deficit, like you just said, which is being in a deficit of calories. We're giving our body less calories than it needs. And if we want to put a definition to what that is in a black and white manner, that is starvation. You are starving your body of a certain amount of calories. And I think that you and I can both agree that starvation is stressful. We're not supposed to.
Right.
And
Yeah, exactly.
when we put too much stress on our body's smart. And its number one priority is to make us survive. And that's what it does. When it's too stressed for too long, AKA living in a diet for too long, it goes into a survival state and it stops caring about the things that we care about, like weight loss or vanity metrics. And it only cares about getting us through our day to day. So what happens is instead of taking those calories that we're eating and burning them as energy, instead we're now taking the calories that we're eating and storing them on our body for later. Because although we as people know, look, we have a grocery store on every corner, we know we're going to get another meal, our bodies don't. We evolved as a civilization much faster than we could as a human being. And so our body's still in that hunter-gatherer mode where our brain is like, hey, I can just Uber Eats my next meal. We're safe.
Okay. So where do you see the big stumbling blocks are? So someone's probably very excited to work with you in the beginning. At what point do they hit a wall where they need help to keep going? Or, a large percentage of them may drop out because now it's starting to get tough. Like how soon does that happen? And what does it look like? The first one.
These are good questions. The biggest stumbling block is right in the beginning, because if you can't tell by now, I'm very different from mainstream weight loss strategies, right? And so when you have this guy that's 30 years old and a male telling a woman that's 50 years old that she needs to eat more food and change how she exercises and probably exercise less, and that goes against everything you've been taught, every red flag in the building goes up because it's so against what we know or think we know is right. So that's the biggest hurdle, is getting them past that. And the only thing I can really do is point to all of our past clients and be like, hey, look, this lady went from 1,200 calories up to 2,300, and this is how her body changed. Would you like that result? The answer is always yes. And then the other one is you just got to trust the process for 7 days, maybe 14 days. And after that, it's very smooth sailing, because I'll be honest with you, there's no quick magic. I'm not the quick fix guy. There's no quick magic in eating more food and then watching the scale just plummet. But what we will see happen is that people eat more food and their body will start to exit that survival state. And because of that, they'll have more energy. Maybe they'll even feel hungrier as they're eating more. Their cravings will go down. They'll sleep better. They'll be in a better mood. They'll focus better. And even though the scale didn't change, their body did, right? Their face is slimmer. Their waist is slimmer. And when they see that, they're bought in, right? Because number one, this is way more enjoyable. They have more food freedoms. And number two, they're actually seeing the result they haven't seen in years.
Yeah, I guess, when you're in starvation mode, the body's going to say, well, we can't afford to have muscle. We need to just store fat because we're not getting enough food here. If this keeps going, we're going to die. So we better just take everything and, again, keep storing and storing and storing is my guess.
You just nailed it. You just nailed that.
Okay, so after just a week or two with this increased eating, what do the women report to you as they're told to eat more? Like, what kind of difficulties do they have? Do they have to say something to themselves, like when they're going to eat a meal they normally wouldn't? Or like mentally, what kind of things need to be said in order to enable this to happen?
Look at the results that have come before me is generally what happens. And it's not this quick and easy process. Like, I wish it would be, right? Of course I do. But there's always these red flags that come up. So first they're eating more, but at the same time, yes, they're eating more calories, but maybe they're still avoiding carbs because they were taught that carbs were bad. And so then that's the next hurdle we need to address, is like, they'll come to me and be like, hey, Joe, I ate all my calories, but it was really hard because I didn't eat some of the carbs that could have filled me up because I think a brownie is going to make me fat. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. And God, carbs for middle-aged women are actually perfect for sleeping. So it's like, no, next we need to show you that you can also eat carbs while you're eating more calories. So we'll go through the same battle of, well, I'm scared. And I'll tell them that I wasn't wrong yet, right? They ate 2, 3, 4, 500 more calories for the past 2 weeks and they feel better. Why do you think I would be wrong about this one? And It's a balancing act. We don't want to add too much too fast, and I want to build trust as fast as possible.
So, okay, so it's more mental, I guess, for women, and they're coming from a caloric deficit versus maybe another cohort of people that may be coming from caloric excess. It's just
Yeah.
interesting that it's very different.
Yeah, it's very different. It's mental, but it's also tough because they don't get the hunger cues, right? So I'm telling them to eat more food, but they're not that hungry. So that's hard.
So what happens to them when they start eating like this? Mentally, physically, what changes do they tell you they notice right off the bat after, like in the first week?
My God. Number one, how much more enjoyable day-to-day life is, right? Because then they can walk in the break room at work and not have to feel that guilt or that fear around eating more food, right? They can go there, they can eat the food, and at the same time, instead of talking negatively to themselves, they can say, oh, this is so amazing because I get to enjoy this, but I actually get to enjoy this. I get to be present and not be stuck in my head about what's going to happen because I'm eating it. I know I'm actually doing my body a favor. So that's one of the first things we'll see. And then a few of the other things that we'll notice right off the bat are what we call biomarker changes, or what I would just mark up simply as quality of life changes, right? So because we're exiting that survival state, we're having more energy because the body's using those calories rather than storing them. We'll focus on work better or just day-to-day life. We'll sleep better. Cravings are gone because guess what? You can listen to them. And when you listen to them, they go away. So those are some of the first ones.
Okay. What about the weight training, itself? Like, what are some of the hesitations that women have? Do they have a fear of weights? I mean, do they feel like they'll get bulky with muscle, or is it different? They just feel like the weights are heavy and it's going to crush them, or they'll break something, or they can't lift them?
Yeah, sometimes it's that fear, but that's a very easy one to overcome because nobody ever needs to start in the gym with heavy weights. I think heavy is a very subjective word. I think the harder thing is for a 40, 50, 60-year-old woman, even a 30-year-old woman, to hear me say, hey, look, I understand your goals. I know where you want to go. In order to get there, you're going to need to lift very similar to me. And then they see me at 5'11" with a fair amount of muscle on my body and make this comparison, or this relation, I should say, of, well, this muscular guy is telling me to lift like him. That means I'm going to look like the muscular guy. So that's a really big thing we need to overcome, which really isn't super difficult. We can do that on the call if you want. But then the other thing is, like you said, scared of being crushed by weights or just sometimes being judged in the gym. And the best thing to say is, well, you don't need to start in the gym. You can start at home with no one home and with no weights because your body is the weight. You're fighting resistance and gravity, and that's all you need to get started.
Okay. So what about the weight versus I fit, how my clothes fit type of argument? What do you tell the women? Look, the scale may not change, but what you're really looking for is for clothing to fit better or looser or be more comfortable. Like what are you telling them, and what are they telling you that again could cause them a problem? I've been working out for 2 months. I haven't lost any weight. It's not working type thing.
Yeah. Gosh, I think that is the hardest one to overcome because as women, and I think that specific generation, they were taught that the number on the scale mattered, and it mattered more than just about anything else. When in reality, if I ask a question, right, I'm going to make this very, very extreme right now. And I want all the listeners that are resonating with this to answer it. Let's say that right now you're 170 pounds and you want to be 130. 130 has been your goal since you were in college. You've never been there. But let me add this in there. If I can snap my fingers, you wake up tomorrow morning and you're 130 pounds, but you hate how you look, your clothes don't fit well, you have no energy, you're in a terrible mood, and you sleep like crap every night, would you still want to be 130 pounds? Or would you be more okay with wearing